Hello! I just wanted to pop in. I am currently editing the video that you're going to see, and I forgot to give an introduction, so I wanted to say hello. My name is Madison, and I'm going to be talking about cover art illustration. And I also wanted to point out that I'm going to be popping in every now and then, like as I'm editing, to clarify, and if you see me looking different than the main recording, I want to re-record some parts, and so I want to let you know that's what's going on. So thank you for watching. Let's get into it. Simply put, the career of book design is the design and illustration of book covers. Book cover artists utilize skills in illustration, calligraphy, and photo editing to create eye-catching compositions for their clients to be printed and published. In terms of the artistic path, a lot of the time the starting point, I would say, would be to build a portfolio of your art. And while you are building your portfolio, it's really important to think about what are your skills, what kind of style are you particularly interested in pursuing. You can do more than one, but what is your specialty? What do you do particularly well? And highlight that in your portfolio. I think a really good example of this specifically is Mary Grand Prix, who is the cover artist for the Harry Potter series, and I think I'm going to put some here. Here are some of the covers that I'm referring to. And these are iconic covers. I mean, the story itself is very, very successful, the book series, but as a kid, I remember the book covers always stood out to me. They have a very cohesive style to them. Some other artists, Willie Staley, I believe is how you pronounce it, or Will Staley, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. He works with, commonly with Stephen King and V.E. Schwab. All of the covers that he's done, I think, are another great example of cohesive, but still very stylized, and they always pop out to me. So here are some of those. A personal favorite of mine, but this is partially because the book series is also a personal favorite of mine, but Karina Granda, she has done work with Holly Black and a lot of the Cruel Prince series. She has done the cover art for those, and I've always just really, really loved those. So I wanted to highlight her here. In terms of purpose or function, the purpose of a book cover is to grab your attention and highlight potential themes in the book. Attention to detail is an important part of what book designers do. Readers notice when a book cover has incorporated details of the book into its composition. It becomes an Easter egg for them. When I think of attention to detail, I often think of Natalie Sosa and her work on the cover of Lightlark by Alex Astor. The composition is made up of a heart with wildflowers growing out of it, and this is actually an homage to the main character and her culture. She's considered a part of the wild folk, and they have built a reputation for their diet, which consists mainly of hearts. This information was already available to fans before they read the book because Alex Astor was sharing details like this via TikTok as a form of promotion. What's interesting about this is that because Alex Astor is an independent author, when time came to choose a cover, she let fans decide. Natalie Sosa made 2 different covers, and both were posted. Fans got to pick which cover they wanted, and this cover was a clear winner. I think this goes to show how important attention to detail is for readers. That is our job as a cover artist, is to talk with your clients and really get an idea for what are the important pieces that they want highlighted, because they know the story better than anybody. I mean, when you get into bigger publishing, then you're going to be, and this goes into clients as well, you're going to be talking a lot of the time more with like the publisher, as opposed to if you're working with an independent author, you're really going to be collaborating with that author. So regardless of if you are working directly with an author or with a publishing house, like I just said, which you would be one step removed from the author, the goals of what cover artists do remain the same, and that is taking the elements that are asked to be incorporated and turning it into a really eye-catching composition. And why is that so important? It's important because for authors, if a book is sitting on a shelf, it doesn't matter how good it is. If no one has their attention drawn to it and it's sitting there, nobody's going to know how good it is. So how do we draw attention to it? That is the main question, and that is really done with a really compelling title and a really interesting cover art. When you go into a bookstore, there are tables that are filled with books, and you get to look and see each cover, each title, and kind of pick and choose, oh, this looks like something that I would be interested in. A lot of the time you can tell what the theme or the general aesthetic of a book is going to be just off of the book cover alone. What I think is really interesting about this is that in a similar way to how books have genres, covers also have corresponding genres. If you think about it, these types of books here the covers look very similar, and that is because the genres and the subject matter themselves are similar. That also goes with these books. All of these are thrillers, and they all have a very clear tone to them in the cover alone. And I think that that is a very interesting balancing act for cover artists, is taking the information given to them and making a cover that is simultaneously fitting into a certain genre enough to be identifiable, and also stand out enough to draw attention to it. That is a very interesting aspect of this, and while it doesn't necessarily directly relate to what we were originally talking about, I find it very interesting and I wanted to include it. So let's go back to composition. Composition is so important. It's not just about illustration. I mean, some book covers don't even have illustration on them. Sometimes it's just a photo and some text, and you really have to use what you have to stand out as much as possible, basically. I think that that is a very huge component of what makes cover art successful, and why does it exist anyway? Like, why is it so important that there's an entire industry of it, like an entire field or career made out of it? We say don't judge a book by its cover, but we do. We do that. Now, I'm gonna pop in here. I know that that was a very long explanation, but I just want to kind of wrap that bit up and explain why I included all of it in this video. And that is because everything that I just talked about, as deep as I went into it, it all ties back to what is the purpose of this career. And when it comes down to it, fundamentally, that question that I asked, how do you make those books stand out? That is the purpose of book cover designers. It is to answer that question and create a solution to that question for authors and for publishers. We're going to move into talk of degrees now. Yeah, in terms of degrees, there is no one set, like, this is the degree you need to do this. It's not as cookie cutter as that. It's not a one size fits all. If you do want to be a very illustrative artist, then you're going to want to get a degree in illustration. If you are more thinking composition, design, text, like that is where you want to lie, then you might want to get a design degree. It is varied. But I do think that something within the art field will be beneficial. The transition after you have built this portfolio and you have your degree and you're ready to start working professionally, I want to talk about that stage next and what that's going to look like in terms of work, and also what that's going to look like in terms of who are your clients, which I think is also very important. I think the best route here would be commission work, get started with that, have somewhere that you can post your portfolio and post your prices for commissions and have a good place to just advertise yourself and your work. I know Fiverr is a common, like, commission-based website, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be an art platform. And in terms of clientele, I'm going to get into that here. And I also think a good place to start is independent authors, smaller independent authors, self-published authors. That is a very good place to start because they are going to have a lower budget in terms of what they're looking for, and you are going to be offering something that meets their budget a lot of the time. What I meant by that is that if you are someone who is in the beginning stages of your career, if you are just getting started working as an artist professionally, your price point for what kind of commission work you're going to be doing is going to be a lot lower than these massive artists that I've listed earlier in the video, who have these long catalogs and portfolios of work that they've already done, and they are already in with the publishers. Publishers know them and have worked with them before. So it's going to be both a lot more difficult for you as a beginner who has not built that reputation yet to get into a publishing company, like get in and work with them. It's also unattainable for the authors to commission work from those artists because their price point is not within their budget. Because you're working with the author themselves, it is much more collaborative. You have that room to really firsthand talk with them, get an idea of what they want, talk about what is doable, what you can offer. It's mutually beneficial and I think that's why it's such a good first step. Now, I did already talk a little bit about viewing and interaction. You interact with book cover art every time you walk into a bookstore. Every time that you read a book, every time that you see a book online. Yeah, anytime you interact with a book, you are interacting with the cover art for that book. And so the one thing that I didn't cover is work environments. I said a little bit, but I don't think you're going into like a 9-to-5 at a publishing, like that's not realistic. It is probably most likely a lot of commission work, and that is very different for every artist. I mean, some people have studios that they work out of, some people work from home. It's going to vary, and your schedule is going to vary. It is pretty flexible in terms of what the typical work environment would be. I don't think that there is a typical work environment. I think it's different for everybody. And I think that's the case with a lot of like commissioned work in general, not just artists doing commissions. You kind of have like an expectation of when this is going to be done and what needs to be done and how much you're going to get paid. But other than that, the rest of it is very much on whoever is being commissioned. It is their responsibility to maintain a schedule that is going to get it done in time. I think what I'm trying to say here is that an important part of determining what work environment is going to be best for you is going to be examining the traits that you have and how you work. If you are more successful working independently and you do better in a home environment, then commission work is something that's doable for you from your home. There are plenty of people who, regardless of their work ethic, maybe they're easily distractible, or maybe the home environment just does not work for them. They need to be somewhere and be surrounded by other people working. And so if that's the case, they might prefer working in a studio environment, and that's something that's still attainable as a cover designer. You can rent a studio, you can rent a space alongside other artists, and that might be the best bet. I am so sorry about my cats. They are causing havoc outside right now. There are plenty of people who, because their work style is different than my work style, and because their limitations are different than mine, it would be the complete opposite. They would need somewhere to go to do that. And so they might rent a studio. It might be more beneficial to be surrounded by other people. The fact that that is still something that is doable, I think, is a huge plus. The fact that somebody who is the complete opposite of me has a complete opposite way that they work efficiently, they still have a way that they could do this career. That level of flexibility, I think, is an asset to this career path. I think that having that level of tailoring to you and your personal needs, that's not a super common thing. I think it's more common within the art field, but I don't think that's something to be taken for granted. That is just a thought. So to conclude this wasn't on the criteria, but I think that this is a big question that isn't, I think it's just as important as everything else that we've talked about so far. And I know this is a long video. Why am I interested in this path? Why do I think that this is for me specifically? I'm going to limit it to the big three, okay? Collaboration, creative exploration, and subject material. And what do I mean by that? Collaboration, which is the most self-explanatory, any sort of commission work, especially among two artists, I would argue that writing is artistry. There is a level of collaboration there. You know, you are speaking with your clients to meet their goals and what their expectations are, and you are trying to make what they have in their head become a physical, tangible thing for them. That is very collaborative. I think that's a really, really fun, really cool aspect of this career. Now, creative exploration. Okay, I want to re-explain this bit because I don't think I did it well. Basically, all I'm trying to say here is that because style is so niche, you can have so many different, like there's so much room for exploration, all while still being under the umbrella of illustrative work. You can have very minimal styling, you can have very detailed painterly styling, or you could have cartoon styling, and it's all still technically illustrative. So if you specialize in illustrative, you have room to explore different styles within that category. And on top of that, the next bit that we're going to be talking about, I'm going to be kind of diving into non-illustrative book cover design. Like we can think of Barbara by Barbara Streisand, right? Right here. It is a very simplistic cover. It is a black and white photo of her, but there was a lot that went into this in terms of how the composition was laid out, where they put the text, what color grading they wanted. Did they want it black and white? Did they want it in a certain like filter? What was going on there? And it's all to set this like moody tone, right? This reads very like reflective and moody. And that was all, those are all elements that were thought of when they were making the composition and making the book cover themselves, even though it's very simple. It's just a photo and some text that says her name, right? But there was still a lot that went into this. It was very strategic. And I think that shouldn't be discredited just because this doesn't look like this, which is a very illustrative book cover. These are both skill sets, and you can learn both of these. Now, someone who's doing this might not be doing this, and like I said, you might want to pick one in terms of what you're prioritizing. What you learn when you learn how to do illustrative work still can carry over into non-illustrative work, especially in composition. And book cover design really is about it's about composition. So everything that you learn when you learn how to do illustrative work in a very striking way, it's that education is going to carry over, and vice versa. I think it is not a one or the other. And now we're going to move on to the final bit, which is subject material. I am as passionate about this as I am because I love books. And I love the idea of merging these two things that I love so much, which is art and literature. I think it is a perfect meeting place for me. My mom is a writer. She wrote my entire life. She has a published book, and she had a very successful blog at one point, and I've just always been around a very creative and nurturing environment when it comes to writing specifically. I did consider writing at one point, but I love art, and I am like I said, I'm a beginner artist, so I am not like I'm not the best at it. I would never claim to be great at it, but I do love it, and I do think, like anything, like any skill, you can learn to be great. I don't know, I've really started leaning into art more, and so for me, this is a really great middle ground. And I think that's a great place to end it, is just like, in terms of what I would be happiest in and most successful in, it would be merging these two things that I love so much would be one of the most fulfilling things I could do. And that is why I am interested in book cover design. Thank you for watching. Okay.